Chris, let's talk about fantastic people for a moment. Our guest is a true Renaissance man in the realm of sports, entertainment, entrepreneurship, and on top of all that, he is a devoted father, veteran, music executive, and a self-proclaimed unapologetic hustler. I'm telling you, somebody that can do it all. And in his most recent role, he is the founder and chief executive officer of the music label and management company Infinity and Recording. Please welcome Jerry Deifer to the Live Your Dreams podcast. Jerry, thank you so much for coming on board.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Great.
I mean, I don't know how you can get a more impressive resume than we just ran down for you, man. I feel like you could do it all. You're the miracle man there. You're really an inspiring individual.
Yeah, well, the old saying goes, "The jack of all trades, the master of none." But I think I did the opposite. I truly believe in sticking my hands in multiple verticals. That's just how I operated since I came out of school. So yeah.
No, you're absolutely right. I was going to say that because you seem like you're mastering every single one of them. When you go in those directions, it's success after success. It's so exciting, and you have some exciting new ventures going on right now. But you talked about that. You went to school, you started your career. Have you always been this way? Because for our listeners, so many young listeners that are aspiring entrepreneurs or artists that are trying to reach for high goals, it seems like you have a lot of charisma. You have that confidence. Was Jerry always this way as a young man, or is that something you kind of built yourself into over time?
I think, really a lot of it comes from discipline. I mean, I didn't always have the drive to become an entrepreneur, and believe me, there's plenty of ups and downs as being an entrepreneur. I think meddling through those ups and downs and the various curves that approach, I've just been a true advocate for innovation and change, and I think that's a huge part of the reason that I always never thought that I could do it better than the next guy. I just thought that I could add a really special sauce to that. And then once I was able to do that, through the various journeys, whether it be the music, coming out of the military, the Marine Corps taught me extreme discipline. Obviously, you learn your craft, really honing in and what the mind and how you operate. Going from there and coming out into civilian life, I really didn't have a direction. I think I kind of chose music. My dad was a huge advocate of music, repaired old jukeboxes when I was a child, and I was always listening and being exposed to certain types of music. So when I came out of the military, I was like, you know what, I'm just going to do my thing. And I had a child super young, and I knew that I had to, pay for bills, you can take care of myself. You're not really accustomed to that coming from the military or even the high school life of where mom and dad are taking care of you. Is like, hey, what's going to prop up my future for success and something that I want to do. That led me into, just being, I guess, as you labeled it, a hustler. I'll call it an ambitious kid at the time. I think I was 21 years old. I stood outside of the MTV buildings in New York City, and just everybody that walked out, I kind of just give them the, hey man, I want to get put me on, and right. A lot of people came out and was like, oh, what are you doing? What possibly could you get out of this? Including my parents, including everybody that was my support system at the time. So, but, all that trials and tribulations, I ended up getting a hand from an individual that walked out of that building and ended up putting me into what I'll call is the start of my journey in terms of entrepreneurship into the music business. And, I think that night, actually, he took me to, his name's Walik, is a pretty infamous guy in terms of the New York scene, in terms of hip hop music. And he took me to a Blue Cantrell and Sean Paul party that night. It was a new song that was coming out at the time. This is 2004-ish, 2005. And then, through that, I went to the party and I was just like completely enamored with like the event process. It wasn't really like the cool celebrity things. I think that's what the part of it that I maybe jumped over, where people could get starstruck or get stuck in this scene of like, wow, all these stars. I really morphed into like the people and the excitement of the atmosphere that they were enjoying. So it was, whether it was the event decor, whether it was the type of music or the DJ or the organization of the red carpet, all of those things kind of took me at first. And and then from there, it just morphed into the various iterations of my learning curves. And I always I was always the guy that after that event, I think I left there and then got immediately enamored with the events business. And I was just like, you know what, I'm going to do this. So I was like talking to people back. I come from Philadelphia, outside a town outside of Philadelphia. And I remember telling a couple of my guys at home, I was like, yeah, we're going to do this party. And I was like, I could do this. I could do this. I could do this, you know? And then a couple of guys, you throw up a couple $1,000, we're going to promote this thing, and nobody shows up. So you get your get your first immediate punch in the face of like, man, this might not be your thing. You just lost a couple $1,000. And at the time, a couple $1,000 is like shit.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So that you know, not to go into a whole long story about it, but that was definitely my drive into exploring and innovating the space of fan and artistry and the music business in general. I've never been one to stay within, you know, and I'll always identify the music industry is defined in three pillars. It's the recorded music, the live music, and the publishing side. Those are the three pillars in which artists and musicians get paid today. And but as I went and did this events world, and then I dove into the recorded world, so I started doing like street team, hanging posters up for Def Jam, and I worked under, you know, I was doing all these things in the city, just getting my feet wet, but at the time being a sponge, right? Like I just want to learn everything I possibly can, and then master that craft and learn that craft, and then try to throw my own little gasoline on it, if you will. Yeah.
No, that's incredible.
Yeah, I love this whole like asking your style receive type of concept. You kept asking, eventually came. I see a Buddha in the back of you. Did you employ that also Buddhist type of philosophy in with your discipline as coming from the military as well? Does that part of your success come from that as well?
I think I found that later on in my journey of entrepreneurship. I think I needed to focus on my mind, body, and soul. And like maybe I'll say halfway through when things got really bad. And again, this is not all painted colors. I mean, this is definitely a bunch of hills, you know. And one of the things that I'll say is about entrepreneurship in general. It's just it's amazing. And I think what really people when they start out is they really should define what they will define as success. And I define success today is in my happiness and my ability to afford a roof over the head and take care of my children. I'll consider myself moderately successful and be extremely happy. Now, I know friends in my circle that, you know, at 25, 26 years old have when we talk about financial success versus, you know, business success, you know, have extreme financial success and things that I couldn't even fathom. And to this day, I haven't had an exit close to one of my buddies that's 27 years old that had extreme exits, you know. So there's a lot of things to unravel in entrepreneurship, but I do find that if you find an industry that you really hone in on and really identify the tweaking and the innovation that you could provide, then there is room for it. And that's what I did with music, and entertainment in general.
It really says so much about you, Jerry, because it's incredible. And for our listeners that don't realize what it took you to do to go outside and stand outside MTV like that, if people have to realize and visualize where that actually is in Times Square around all that energy, and like you see a young Jerry standing outside there with the guts to actually do that. That is incredible that you and your support system kind of saying, what are you doing here? I mean, it must have been such give and take of you, but it shows the determination of who you are as a character of an individual to go through that. I'm just mesmerized by that, really, Jerry. That's a phenomenal story. And now that go full circle to say you see the world in almost a different way of seeing what success is. Did a young Jerry at that time when you said, look, I need to get myself in that door, what was your mindset there? Because that takes a lot of guts to actually step up to the plate and say, I'm going to wait outside for somebody to try to not give me an opportunity, but I'm going to force my hand in there to talk to the right people. How do you suggest young people today actually start stepping up to these opportunities and trying to take advantage of what's around them?
Don't take no for an answer. I think just continue to bat down the door, right? Like I definitely stood there for 4 or 5 days straight and the person that gave me the opportunity and then which propelled me then. I mean, once somebody does provide you the opportunity, it's really on you to then find where you could provide value. And that's the extreme, innovative component that I find that really helped me was like, okay, I got to pick a niche, find that niche and figure it out. I don't think that anybody should be scared to ask questions. I think that's a really big thing. And I think people get intimidated by people with success or power. And it's not. I love being, I have two young folks out of college right now that I would call my mentor. I call them my baby Yodas. But they do so many things, and then when you give them the keys or the knowledge, then they're able to actually, you can see them propel. So I think it's that same process, that there wasn't a specific individual. I mean, yes, an individual granted me access to this, and then I kind of picked it up and I said, hey, if I could bang down that door, I'm gonna go try to bang down a bit bigger doors, you know.
Sure.
And then when I had the opportunity to go and work at Def Jam, of knocking on the door of, hey, let me street team this, working for a guy that's, you know, infamous in the business of hip hop, named Pekos. And when Pekos gave me the opportunity to be the street team guy running around, it was only a matter of time before I walked down the hallway and banged on L.A. Reid's door to say, hey, what's this business about, you know? So it was really about like kind of like that ladder effect of, you know, never stop trying to be innovative and make that next step, right? Like that's what I would say. Yeah.
No, I love that. Do you feel that you, again, I think you mentioned a little bit before, but you got that kind of attitude and a lot of discipline, obviously, from the military. But did you always have that drive as a younger man, or did that come to you later in life when you started getting into those late teenage years?
As a younger man, I would say I was a bit of a I don't know, define it as a knucklehead, but I would do the things that I was probably told not to, and I would learn from the consequences of the actions that I took. So through consequences and through those actions, I learned what was right or wrong. I don't know if I had an actual figure to teach me the business side of things, and that's maybe why when I talk about the roller coaster effect of entrepreneurship, that's probably why when you're going down, up and down for the first, you know, few years until you understand that, hey, I need to make sure that the entity structure is proper. I need to make sure business management is in the proper place. I got the accounting team. We're filing taxes quarterly instead of yearly, just to make sure you're maintaining all of your accounts payables and all these other things that come into effect when you start to operate your own business, right? So it's great to learn. But then as an entrepreneur, you're going to kind of step out, and the ideal goal would be to do this and build it on your own, right? It's you know, that's the idea, and that's kind of where, if you see anything, especially in the music industry, I mean, most of the curve has existed. When I went in and I was banging down doors, it was still an analog space. We were listening to CDs and cassettes at the time, so record companies were like, oh my God, we're losing money. This is when Spotify and all the DSPs started coming on board, right? But, oh no. So then all of this learnings that I did become obsolete, right? So as you're learning all these things, you got to continue to say, okay, what other spaces are there? And that's when I started to say is like, make sure that there's not a plan B, but a pivot. I usually call them pivots. Like I'll pivot to still the same sector, but a space that isn't arbitraged by some other actions or some other ability from an outside source, right? And it was funny, you know, it's not funny, but it was crazy to actually see the record companies at that time like not knowing what to do, not how do we figure this out, right? And that's a part of entrepreneurship as well. It's like you're going to hit those points even in your own entrepreneurship world, is that you're going to be like, what do I do now? Like, oh no, this person is doing something very competitive to me, or I'm getting mixed signals. This person's a lot more successful, but they started 5 years after me. You know, those type of things. It's like, how do you deal with them? And a lot of that mental stability comes into play, hence the Buddha and finding that halfway through. It's like, you know, you come with the emotional roller coaster as well, comes with the financial business roller coaster at the same time.
No,
That's excellent advice. I'm hearing things like, you know, it's like you don't want to be paralyzed by fear. You want to make a choice. You want to take an action, learn from that, and then take that forward with the new learnings that you've acquired.
Yeah. I always say the most successful venture I've ever done was myself. So like, you know, as an entrepreneur, like I couldn't be anywhere if I didn't focus on me first. So like continuing to define, educate, and build yourself is the priority as an entrepreneur. And then from there, the focus is the business or whatever industry you're trying to propel in.
The 100%, Jerry, that's so well put. How you said that you have to take care of yourself first, and I'm so glad you used that word earlier, pivot, because I know so many young entrepreneurs or people that are into arts and that kind of business, when they feel like they may have to shift, they see it as a loss or they're leaving something and not realizing that pivoting within your own field of business or entrepreneur or your own artistic space is so important. You will have to pivot at various points, especially in an entrepreneurship career or somebody who's an artist. And it's so important you said that. That's not a loss pivoting. You're actually moving forward when you pivot. So let's get us past the pivot, Jerry. You're going to the point now and you're starting to branch out on your own. You're starting to break out as an entrepreneur. You're spending those times around places like MTV, Def Jam. You're moving around. You're making connections in the business. Now you start to step out on your own. How was that process for you to really be out there now saying, you know what, I'm going to take that next step and really move myself forward in my entrepreneurial journey?
Mm-hmm. Hard, but yeah. Well, now that I look back at it, I through the process of those, I'll call it 2-3 years of running around the music industry and becoming the sponge, all of those attributes that I may have learned that I was able to, when I did pivot, I was able to pull the mindset, the understanding of that silo of the entertainment industry, and then find out the artistry and focus more on the artist and how does the artist get paid and all of those things. So I was learning about that process at the same time. So when I was able to pivot, I ended up going into the live space where I said, now I'm going to take an equity percentage. So I'm saving up the money while I'm learning the industry, saving up the money, and then at the same time, concurrently. So I'm still doing this and earning money, but I'm now venturing out on my own, small to start. At the time, I took a minority ownership in a club-sized venue, which is 1,000-cap room in Allentown, Pennsylvania.
Okay, yeah.
And that club ended up at the time was, there wasn't a band that you hear today or even in the 90s and early 2000s that didn't go through this facility. So it was kind of like the next phase. And when I pivoted over there, I saw that, okay, now learn the business, now learn actual just business infrastructure, P&Ls. And this is when I got into the live space. It's like you really understand how to operate a venue. So the venue learning was totally different than the record label learning. So as I'm pivoting, I'm still using those attributes that I learned there, as well as the artist connections, as well as the management connections and everything to now morph into the live space. And when I got to the live space, I was a fish out of water again, trying to figure out, how am I going to get back in there? How do we do this? How do we do that? I didn't have a successful time until about 9 months into that venture, when I just kept feeding the only cash that I had. I was down to the point of bringing pennies from under my car seat to get Dunkin' Donuts at the time. So was giving every single penny I had to the club to try to figure out this business. And slowly, because the record companies were going down, it's like that I'm on the downhill of the roller coaster in that pillar, right?
Yeah.
And when I'm coming up, I'm in this live space now, which live never dies. That's the thing, is that you learn is as soon as you're in it, is like concerts will never die.
Sure. Yeah.
The great thing about a venue is like you have a venue that you can facilitate any genre of music. It's agnostic, right? Like you're running 365 days a year. So I'm learning all of this about multiple genres now, and I'm getting all of that in that flex there. And long story short is I pretty much booked a year about 250 shows.
Oh, wow.
Everybody from Taylor Swift to Breaking Benjamins to Puddle of Mud, 3 Doors Down, every possibly think of. When they were starting, they had to come through this venue. And then at 11 months in, we're rocking. We're in Polestar, #1 club size venue in the world for ticket sales. We're like the attribute, the time and effort you could see starts to pay off.
Sure.
The revenue didn't catch up to all these cool accolades that you're getting from the newspapers and all this cool stuff, but it does further prove that you can go now to an investor to say, hey, at a multiple effect of this is where it actually gets better. So that's where I was like, okay, I got this piece, and now I'm on that upswing where things are looking good, and we're going to reach the top here. Things are looking really good. Got a bunch of paperwork. Let's go out and get investors. Let's go out and find people to invest in the next iteration of what these club size venues are. And I did pull in a bunch of real estate guys and a fund, and we started expanding, and we opened up about 3 or 4 more across the United States. And this is pre-Live Nation, by the way.
Sure.
So when all that's said and done, and you're starting to work on retail, you're understanding development, you're understanding leases, your lease negotiations. I mean, you're just literally like being enamored with all kinds of information, and still the sponge always through. But yeah, that's where we are in the cycle of Jerry, is that club kind of turned everything around for me, because that was the highlight of me being able to step out on my own and be the face of somebody else loaning me money to do something, right? And that's a huge, as an entrepreneur, it's like, yeah, you can play with your own money, but being able to put a business plan, put numbers in front of somebody and really say, okay, here's what it's going to pencil out to be, and them trusting you, that made me feel so like fantastic at the time as an entrepreneur. Yeah.
Jerry, you kidding me? That is a huge accomplishment, and so many entrepreneurs in their careers kind of get stopped there. You know what I mean? Like, by the time it's time for them to first go out, people develop these ideas, they talk about it, they piddle around for a while, and a lot of people fizzle out. That first time you went out there, when you were talking to your first potential investors, did you have that feeling in the pit of your stomach that said, am I crazy? Am I going to make them their money back? Because so many people can't get over that hill, that is not just a hill, that's a mountain for people to climb that first time. Or did you kind of attack that full on and said, I'm going for it?
Yeah, I think going for it and then having the weight on your shoulders is definitely something that everybody has to experience to be able to go through. I mean, I've done it a million times now, so I definitely look back at that first time. I guess it depends on your moral compass, because I need to be able to sleep at night, and I just don't feel good about taking $1 million from somebody and being like, this is a P&L. It's a pro forma. It's just a forward-looking forecast, right? So there's nothing that really says this is what it's going to pencil out to be. Here's a 10% ROI. Works. And there's been losses. There's been times where $4 million, $5 million being put up, and it's it's going really, really well, and then boom, done. And you have to sleep at night knowing that you put your best foot forward. You did everything ethically and morally correct. And as an entrepreneur, you're definitely going to go through those things. There's just no missing it. But definitely push through. I mean, again, it would go back to what we talked about before, is that don't be afraid to ask questions. It's a cliche statement, but it's very true. I mean, if you're going to go into an investor, you want to remain confident. You just want to go in there and say, this is what I'm going to do. You don't want to, it's always yes. And even if they're refuting something, it's always yes. And, even if they see a flaw in your business plan, the salesman needs to come out. Right. And that's another thing. I think, maybe it's music, maybe it's just the way I was brought up in the Northeast. We have a very direct and distinctive way of discussing and communicating. So it has helped me in positions. It does hurt me in certain positions too, because when you're working and operating as an entrepreneur, and you have people that work for your various entities, and somebody doesn't like the direct approach that you operate your business in, you could rub people the wrong way. It's just it's a very finicky space that we're in.
I have a question. What advice would you give to the entrepreneurs, like with regard to the philosophy? Is it a burn the boats philosophy where I don't have a plan B or C, I'm going with this plan A, I'm fully convicted? Do you have goals 5, 15, 10, 20 years? Because I see in a lot of industries, people don't really start popping until they're a quarter of a century in. And then all of a sudden people think, oh, it happened overnight. He got lucky or she got lucky.
Yeah, and there is some lottery. Like, there's definitely, again, there's I don't know if there's an approach. Me specifically, I definitely take the approach of, I'm not reaching for what an artist would reach for as stardom. I'm reaching for success, what I define as success. And I think that every entrepreneur could really, really, really lower the stress levels if they define that in a more manageable approach, because like taking one direct approach to something is not going to work. My personal experience, it just doesn't work, because people will never see exactly what you see, and you to communicate that without an MVP in market or a venue to show them or something, like you're only as good as your last, I'm talking music here, you're only as good as your last hit, right? It's like, that's the same thing as an artist. It's like you're only as good as your last hit. So as an entrepreneur, you're only as good as your last exit or your last successful business. So if you don't really have anything to really go back and point to, it's you define what you're fixing and what you're innovating and what your approach is, and collaborate.
Yeah,
Is the best way that I've seen success with entrepreneurs. Ones that are investors and entrepreneurial figures at the same time are really, really adaptable to young entrepreneurs or young, eager individuals. And that's something that you could really go into and look into as you're exploring your possible VCs or wherever you're going out to get funding. Music is definitely a different beast. There's not a lot of people that, go out there and invest in music. I mean, we started up an independent record label in the middle of what everybody would call the craziness of the entertainment sphere, because they're never profitable. It's like, taking a minority ownership in a soccer team that I got right now. Same thing. Like there's one successful club in the entire world, and it's Bayern Munich. That is the only club that makes money. So like when you're sitting here saying, hey, let's get $15 million together to buy a license in City C in an Italian soccer club, it's like everybody's like, you just need a big bankroll. So that's why you always see a lot of the billionaires or something owning these clubs, because nobody thinks that they can fix a broken model. I've always been the guy that likes to fix something that I feel is like stagnant or just needs to reinvent itself, or just needs the right operator to come in because it's archaic, or the model that it's operating in is just old. Yeah.
I love that, Jerry. It's just so much about you that you're willing to always do that. And I love that you see the world in that way. It's almost like you're seeing the puzzle, you're solving the puzzle at all times, and you're always moving things forward. It's fantastic. And now we bring ourselves forward to you now, Jerry. There's so much things you're talking about. You're talking about the soccer team, the sports, the company. You are doing so much. Not only can you be a mentor and somebody that people can look up to in this business world and the craft, you're somebody that now is continuing to move forward and pave the way in the industry. I'm so excited for the audience to learn more about what you're actually doing today, right now, where your career is, because it's very exciting.
Yeah, and I'm working off of all of those early learnings. I'm taking the early learnings that I did throughout my career in the past 22 years that I've been doing all of this, that I am just taking, the bits of the music piece and the recorded side. I have a label. The bits of the management piece, I have a management company. The bits of the venue piece, I have a venue consultancy firm that builds club-sized venues around the world and stadiums and arenas. And the reason that I dove into the sports acquisition is because, number one, the enterprise multiple on sports teams in general is just astronomical today. But also in the venue space, you learn that the primary sources of revenue are food and beverage, ticketing, and sponsorships. And one of the things that I've been able to develop throughout my career, not only in charity and, the Global Citizens, the Africa Risings, and things that I've done across the globe, is that I've been able to rub shoulders with the right people and develop relationships with some of the largest CEOs in the world. And those provide me ample opportunity to present them with projects or ideas and concepts that their company or their corporations can buy into. So the team, the Cesena FC Italian soccer team is I'm very happy to say that just got promoted on Saturday to Serie B. So we took the club over a year and a half ago, and me and a bunch of very influential New York attorneys in New York City, and I was responsible for the operations of the stadium and the team. So I come in immediately when we acquired the team, and I've done this for numerous sports ownership groups before, but I've never done it for myself. And I think that's part of this world is like, is there an entrepreneur that is a consultant as well? Because you need to be an expert in so many different components to start using your own money to operate. So I did that. And with the team, we 15x the revenue in 1 year. I changed all the food and beverage suppliers out. I changed his jersey sponsorships. We revitalized majority of the stadium and now producing entertainment and ancillary events throughout all 2025 coming up this summer and next year. Yeah. So that's it. Success. And the label Infinity was birthed about 2.5 years ago because what I saw in 2004 and until 2008-ish when I started doing live promotions is the heavy investment from the major labels investing in artist development. And there's lag in artist development today where they don't really have time. I don't want to say they don't have time. I just don't think that they have the ample resources that's required to develop an act or to take an act and really lean in. We're a boutique label. We have 6 artists, probably looking at going up to about 9 to 11 by the end of the year. The goal of this is to really have a lean in, independent record label that really leans in, stay boutique, don't go crazy with your roster, but provide ample resources and opportunities to the artist outside of your traditional label. Major labels today, they do some of this and they're operating, but as you could see through the public display is that things are shrinking. You know, things are getting more narrow, less asses in the seats, excuse my French, but people, overhead is always going to be the big problem of these things. As you continue to go forward, the digital environment continues to constrain operational costs, and that's in any field. It doesn't matter if it's music, if it's sports, if it's anything. Those numbers are not going to continue to grow because there's not much more margin that we can drive from a ticket value of $35 to $38. That $3 in revenue per person doesn't really, because minimum wage goes up $1, taxes go up 1 point. Like there's things that, so yeah, I love everything that I do today. As an entrepreneur, obviously the flexibility of time and my schedule and being home with my wife and kids as much as I possibly can. I do travel a lot for work, but yeah, I would say that the 22 years that I put into this, I'm very, very happy where I'm at right now. Yeah.
Nice.
I don't see how you can really. You are an inspiring individual, and obviously you are continuing to grow every day. It's so amazing to be around you. Now, last pieces of advice, and you gave so much to young entrepreneurs, people that are breaking into the arts. But if somebody right now is 22 years old, they're getting out of school, they're 18, and they're starting their journey, they're going to do it, and they have that 30 seconds or 2 minutes of somebody tell you, listen, just hear this in your ear and think about this before you start your journey, what would you say to somebody?
Before you start your journey, be prepared for the ebbs and flows. I mean, that is a constant. I don't think it ever stops. I think the way you manage it is going to be the way that you will find fulfillment. And again, as we said before, people define that in different ways. But if you're morally and ethically responsible and you operate it efficiently, then you will be successful as an entrepreneur. It's just that simple. Because every entrepreneur has the same spirit as me. We just don't give up, you know, and that's just the inevitable of you're not giving up. And it's so cliche. You hear it in every damn industry, but it is definitely the key to success. It's never stopping. You're gonna have losses, a lot. Personally, a lot, but maybe not you. Maybe you will, you know, succeed in your first run at it, become the 100 millionaire and look at me, great. I still don't define that as successful because I probably could have had one of them or two of them. There's a couple of products that I came into market a year or two early that I literally just had a shelf and throw it. Or I'll give you one example. I was doing a speaking engagement at Stanford University and with Professor Grelick, who was a professor there on charity and philanthropic endeavors. And I was in his office. We were chit-chatting and we were going through his filing cabinet, and we found a piece of paper, which is a process patent. And the process patent was a patent to round up debit and credit card transactions to the whole dollar and donate, right? And donate to charity. So I was like looking at this paper. Oh, immediately, like, it's like my mind goes.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm like, all right, can I use this? Let me license this, or you can donate it to me. Yeah. I used this, commercialized this patent. We developed this mobile app around it and skin it, the whole 9 yards. And we launched this product called Changer at Forbes. So I have a relationship with it through my various other endeavors with one of the main guys at Forbes. And he lets me launch it on stage. So I get up on stage in Philadelphia at Forbes 30 Under 30 Summit. And I'm like, this is amazing. This is exactly my audience. I have friends in the influencer space at the time. Vine was a social.
Yeah.
So I had Jake Paul come out. I had Amanda Cerny come out. And I did Swan. So I had all three of these guys and me on stage. And we go on stage and I say, what's the way you launch a company today? And they all pull out their phones and they take a selfie and they post it in like the digital world. So I'm like, cool, great. We launched this platform called Changer about donating to charity, right? And you can throttle your savings. Every time you make a transaction, it's basically set it and forget it. You would swipe your credit card, you wouldn't know, but it would automatically round it up and donate it to any charity you want. You would get tax. Very simple MVP. I had 800,000 subscribers in a matter of a month and a half.
Nice.
Now hear me out, because this is where it gets super interesting. So I get offered 3 of them, but I take the one offer and I'm like, all right, I'm going to exit out right away. 18 months, I sell it. MX Ventures, right? American Express.
Yeah.
They shelf it. They just put it on the shelf. They take the back-end technology and then they license the technology to Verifone, which is the POS machines that you see today. And now everywhere you go, you see, would you like to round up?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Everywhere. Yep.
So that process patent that I had sold for, I'm not going to tell you the amount, but
the
amount, right? So I'm like, yeah, great exit, super successful. I'm looking at it now, $2 billion I missed out on.
Yeah.
You know, but as an entrepreneur, I'm sitting back, I'm like, I'm glad I got to release my product. I'm glad I got to do something that I would consider successful, even if it wasn't what you think it would be in the future, or what you knew it would be in the future, because you don't know. So take your wins when you can, take your losses and hold your chin high and keep it moving. Yeah.
Jerry, you don't get better said than that. Really, you are an inspiring individual. For you to take the time to come on and speak to our audience says so much about you. You are somebody that's just always growing. You're always obviously sharing your story with people. It says so much about you. And you use the word moral compass throughout this interview. And it shows in you that you have such a good one, because what you're willing to share with the world is going to make a huge difference to so many of our listeners. I have to thank you so much for coming on board, Jerry. You're inspiring to me, and I'm sure you are to Chris and everybody listening as well. Thank you so much for coming on today. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me, guys.
No, this has been fantastic. We'll have links to everything you're doing in the descriptions below. As always, this is the Live Your Dreams podcast. Jerry, again, thank you so much. Everything you've done is an accolade. We can't say anything more than you said yourself. You are so inspiring. I thank you so much. Chris, I'm sure you do as well. Thank you, Jerry, so much for coming on board.